Okay, so in today's Daily Cyber, we're going to talk to David Stitt. He's a business strategist with years of experience helping to grow brands like Gillette, Oral-B, Duracell, Braun, Hershey's, Reese's, Twizzlers. We're going to be talking about kind of different things you need to look at in the COVID-19 pandemic and just understand how to protect your business brand. So there's a lot of great information. If you own a business and you're just looking at how to protect your brand through the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a great podcast for you. So let's hack at it. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, Usato. Usato is a Canadian-based cybersecurity company that provides 24/7 cybersecurity support and compliance service that align their customers' tolerance for risk, their clients, suppliers, and government contractual mandates. Usato's teams focus on using insights to drive business decisions. There's no need to leave strategies to chance, when insights can be used to show what changes need to be made and how to make them. Usato offers multiple services to help companies simplify IT, centralize cybersecurity management, and meet compliance standards. Usato can customize their service to work with your existing IT network and programs. For more information, contact Usato at info@uzado.com or visit their website at www.uzado.com. Okay, so on a personal note, I actually talked to the president of Usato and just to kind of figure out what was going on through the COVID-19 pandemic and what his thoughts were. And right now, Usato is offering cybersecurity consultations pro bono to help companies right across North America protect their network, to secure everything, just answer any questions they may have, look at phishing security awareness programs, breach readiness, breach response, remote user assessments, policies, procedures around remote access and user agreements, vulnerability scanning, remediation, and threat risk analysis, just really kind of talking about what's going on. And the reason why they're doing this and why Sean is leading this charge is because he understands how hard it is for business right now, closing down, laying off staff, the economy. He just wants to help and he wants to make sure that everyone that is running a business right now is as secure as possible because the level of attacks in cybersecurity right now are increasing. I just read an article right now today that was actually 66.7% increase in phishing attacks. So hackers are going nuts right now just because it's pandemic, and he wants to make sure companies are staying safe and staying secure. So you have any questions, you need any help, or you just want to, bounce some ideas off, follow up with Sean and Usato's team. Their email address is info@usado.com and their website is www.usado.com. So hey, Dev, how did your day today?
Very good. Thank you, Brandon, for asking.
So how are you doing through the pandemic?
Well, it's like everyone else. It's just battening down the hatches and mitigating any foreseeable risks, and then trying to assess the landscape to understand how to best proceed in this new world that we're all facing.
Which is kind of crazy, as you know, like the business right now are completely changing, right? And for my industry, talking about cybersecurity, we're looking at protection and something that, I know you're into brand development, helping companies look at, developing their brand in the best of times. So now, in these times with cyber crime going up in the pandemic, what are some brand, risks and crimes that you're seeing right now in your kind of client base and your day to day?
Well, the risks certainly are one of remaining relevant. So ensuring your brand remains relevant in
Okay.
this new environment. And in a lot of cases, that's just driving awareness of the fact that your business and brand is still in operation and that you are available to assist wherever possible. But of course, we can't come across too strongly. It's not a sales call
Right.
that we'd be making. It's more one of being a trusted advisor
Okay.
and just checking in with them to ensure that everything is going as well as possible. Any challenges you may be able to assist them in terms of providing some direction or insight on how to overcome an obstacle, for example.
Okay.
And that's where you could add value. But certainly, you're not getting on the phone to make a pitch.
Right. So in this time, you're really kind of saying it's more supportive, right? Supportive type and educational.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yes.
now, what are you seeing like, different companies right now doing to do that? Like I see like banners on companies' websites now saying, "Hey, we're doing the best for COVID-19," and they're going to have a little bit of a script. What else are you kind of seeing to help to educate their clients?
Yeah, well, definitely what people or companies are doing is explaining just very high level what it is they have to offer quickly and how to assist with challenges with COVID, but really putting kind of their position forward as a uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Corporate citizen,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So how they can best give back in this very difficult time,
Right.
where possible. Obviously, I mean, it's not about opening up your checkbook, but being able to add value and make a difference can be very simple, and it doesn't have to require a lot of time or resources. But that's absolutely critical. And we're seeing that even from the big banks here in Canada and even the U.S. The J.P. Morgan's CEO's letter to the shareholders said, it's all about are the other stakeholders right now. Profitability and the shareholders are going to have to take a bit of a back seat.
Right.
Uh, and we have to make sure we're doing all the right things for our clients, for all the other folks within our ecosystem
Right.
to make sure we get through this and as as I guess painlessly as possible.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
when we get out on the other end, then we'll be in a position to get back to business as usual. Right now, it's about sustaining that ecosystem overall as best we possibly can. Now, the challenge with that is you have to ensure it's great that it comes from the CEO, but then I think it was within 24 hours there was a release of some audio tape from a supervisor telling his team at JP Morgan that if you're not coming to work, you better have a doctor's note,
Okay.
right? You better be sick.
Right.
So not, you may have people you have to care for at home. You may have other obligations. You may need to self quarantine because you may suspect you may be sick, or you live with someone who's highly susceptible. There could be many reasons, right? But obviously, again, when someone like that, when a company's coming forward, they have to make sure they're getting that communication out to all their stakeholders, including their employees and supervisors at all levels, and
Right.
make sure that they're being measured on that and letting them know that it's absolutely imperative that they take that new direction, and that they won't be necessarily held to the previous objectives pre-COVID.
Right. And that's congruency right through the whole business, right? Because like you said, if
Exactly.
you see top down approach is that the CEO, C-suite people are saying we're going to do this, and then lower management is saying, no, we're not. There's a
Right.
disconnect. And then with social media and the media right now, like you said, that can also now go out online, and then now there's a disconnect of what's the actual company doing.
Exactly. Well, another one is FedEx. They've come very forward about how they are going to be that great corporate citizen throughout this. But I have a friend with a business, and they got a call from their FedEx agent saying, there's an invoice outstanding. You need to pay it. It's 60 days overdue. And they're like, well, we didn't see it. Send us the invoice. And they just came back and said, well, I'm working from home. I don't have access to those invoices. We're just cutting you off.
Right.
So now, so much for being the good corporate citizen. You can't even provide an invoice that you claim was already sent. They haven't seen. They're willing to pay it. They just want an invoice. You can't provide it, and now you're going to cut them off. So they just have to find an alternative supplier. So it's that incongruency
Right.
between what leadership, what the brand, say the marketers, that messaging that's getting out there, and then what employees or other stakeholders within that ecosystem are actually doing. When the rubber hits the road.
So then that leads me to kind of my question about, why are customers trust so important for brand equity and brand relationship?
Well, because why it's so important is one that human beings, most relationships are based on some fundamentals. One of those is respect. The other is trust, and a brand, in a lot of ways, is a relationship. It's a relationship between individual and that brand, other organizations and that brand, and it's absolutely critical in the foundation to the success of that business. The other thing is trust is something that's not built overnight.
Right.
It takes years, sometimes decades, to build that trust with your clients and sustain that high level of trust with them. Yet, unfortunately, it can dissipate very quickly with a few, let's say, examples of where that trust would be broken down in the relationship, and then it can take a lot more resources to build that trust up again. So it really is a situation where a pound of cure is worth of a pinch of prevention. You really want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward at all times, and that that's consistent with all your stakeholders.
So let's talk about scalability in that sense. Cause I mean, you look at a small to mid-sized company, you know, we've all kind of worked with them, where
Mhm.
larger organizations and corporations have a lot of dollars that they could spend if they make a mistake, whatever. They could put a lot of PR dollars to it. They can kind of recoup. But small to medium-sized companies, if they make a mistake, how do they recover from that if they don't have that big PR spend?
Yeah, and that is a difficult challenge for them as well. Even in larger companies with the big PR spend, some things just can't be bought with money,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So, and I think trust and respect is one of those things. I can get you short-term gratification and maybe calm the waters, if you will,
Right.
but it's going to be still in the back of their mind, and they're not going to forget it. So again, what's really important here is putting your best foot forward and ensuring that all the right things are done to prevent something like that happening in the first place, right?
Right.
So ensuring that whatever the direction of the organization is, whatever that brand promise is very well known by each of the employees or agents of that brand,
Okay.
and that they're living that brand promise day in and day out, right? And
Okay.
so you need to drive awareness, education, training around that, and then also put incentive. You need to incentivize them to execute those behaviors accordingly, right? So
Right.
there needs to be consistency, and as you mentioned, congruency within the organization and how people are measured with that organization versus that overall objective of maintaining trust and the respect of the brand.
So now, with that being said, there's a potential risk, right, when it comes to running a company and really managing your brand, because again, your brand is, you know, in this day and age is so important, especially with social media. Who's really responsible for that risk? Is it the board of directors? Is it the C-suite? Like, who takes responsibility for that?
Ultimately, it's the leadership team, the C-suite.
Okay.
It really starts with them. Everything starts with the leaders of an organization, so they have to very clearly define what the brand represents. You know, what are those brand promises? What are the reasons to believe? And ensuring that across all of the functions within the organization and other stakeholders outside of the organization are
Okay.
aware of what those things are, and are measured on ensuring that they're living up to that promise and delivering on those reasons to believe.
Okay. Now again, looking at kind of small to mid-size, what if they're, you know, they write this mission statement, they have all this, but they're not aligned. Like they're not living that brand. What are we
Yep.
talking about in that sense, in that scenario?
Well, and then you're going to find a breakdown, and you're going to find this incongruency, disconnect between all the PR, all the marketing, and everything else, and then what folks are actually experiencing when the rubber hits the road.
Right.
And then that breaks down. If there is any trust to begin with, then that trust and that respect breaks down very quickly.
Right.
Right. So again, it's very, very important to ensure that again, the right processes are put in place, that everyone is empowered with those processes, technology, and the resources in order to ensure that they can, again, deliver on that brand promise. So it certainly takes a lot of effort thinking. It's certainly one of those things where you're going to you're going to measure 3 or 4 times before you cut.
Right.
Um, and then it's follow through as well, and making sure that folks are doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it.
And I think I wanted to point that out. And then you're making so many great points, is that you just don't be technically bought in. You really have to live it. You really have to, follow that mantra, that mission statement, whatever that the company, focus is. You have to follow it, because if you're not aligned and then all of a sudden now it breaks. And then with social media, if
Mhm.
someone sees that and posts it online on goes on a Twitter feud, right, and goes out or TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever, now there's a disconnect, and now your brand could actually be affected, right? Which
Yeah,
then
that could
affects sales, your business, your clients, everything else.
yeah, certainly go viral and get out there, and it can be detrimental, absolutely, in the long run. And certainly it needs to be addressed and responded to if it does occur, and it does occur. I mean, there are no one or no organization is perfect.
Right,
Uh, but if that does happen, it's absolutely critical that you don't ignore it either,
right.
and that you address it head on and mitigate that risk, however you possibly can.
Now, is that something you do with the clients you work with, is mentor them through both sides of it, of actually writing the policies, writing this, but actually how to implement it as well?
Absolutely. Yes. So helping them understand, again, first understand the brand strategy, kind
Right,
of where they want to play, how they want to win. What does that brand character look like? What does that brand equity look like? What are their points of differentiation, points of parity first, just to that so that they can be in the game.
right,
They have the right to be in the game, and then the points of differentiation that are going to allow them to have a sustainable competitive advantage. And
right.
certainly, as we mentioned before, trust and respect in your brand is a highly coveted, sustainable competitive advantage.
Okay.
So yeah, working with the leadership team to understand what that looks like, and then implementing it across the leadership team, and then also having those leaders live that with their teams as well, both on a team by team basis, but also when they're interacting with other teams within the organization, or again, suppliers or clients or anyone else within the ecosystem. It has to be consistent in all the messaging and interactions.
Now, an exercise like this, what are you looking like timelines? Is this something that takes months, years?
No, not year. Well, years in order to build that level of and trust and respect that you would like to have. But if you're off to a great start and you have a great track record already with clients, you can build that equity just by leveraging those past stories through testimonials, case studies, and whatnot. A lot of the times when I work with the clients, I do a deep assessment of the landscape, and that includes meeting with current clients, former clients, suppliers, and et cetera, to get an understanding of what that brand represents already. Because in a lot of cases, there's a lot to work with there, and it's not like everything has to be thrown out. The baby doesn't have to be thrown out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So understanding what those are, capturing them, articulating them, developing the messaging and the imagery and the symbolism around that is all. A lot of it comes from what already exists.
Okay.
They just have to kind of draw it out of the ecosystem, and
Right.
then that will resonate with people very quickly.
Okay. Yeah, because you're in my, I think it was John Maxwell I was reading that he does like a 360 review, in his company of senior management, colleagues at his level, and then, employees and people that he manages to, and customers, just to kind of get a full feedback of what is going on in a company and along that line, again, suppliers, all that. Because then you get a real good capture, good picture of everything. It's not just one review, one point, it's many points that gives up the story.
Yeah, the fourth and final component, which is always ongoing of the overall program that I train leadership teams on, is ensuring there is that 360-degree feedback loop,
Okay.
and employees, customers, suppliers, they all have to feel comfortable and understand that there is that two-way communication,
Right.
that they are safe and are not exposing themselves unnecessarily by providing constructive feedback. And it could be negative, it could be
Right.
positive, but they need to know that they can provide that, especially employees when they have to report back to their leaders. Is again, as long as it's positioned in a constructive manner, don't just come with the problem, also come with some suggestions as to how it can be solved, right? That's absolutely critical, and that has to be ingrained in the culture as well. It can't be a culture of fear. It has to
Right.
be a culture of opportunity, and a culture of trust and respect as well.
Now, do you work on actual management coaching and mentoring as well to get them in that mindset and that frame of mind to be aligned with the brand and everything that's going on as well?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So I have essentially a 12-week training program,
Yep.
and it's one, maybe two, 1.5 days a week, working with all the different leaders within the organization. And then after the training program, it's working with each of the leaders on a consultative basis, and yes, somewhat of a mentor basis,
Right.
to help them live what it is that was developed with the entire leadership team, and ensure that everything is moving forward as effectively as possible
Okay.
throughout their particular function or team within that organization.
And I think that's essential because I mean I've talked to and worked with different managers, and having someone that they can bounce off scenarios with, that I
Hmm.
had this one scenario, this is how I wanted to deal with it. You know, what's the best way to deal with this situation, scenario, whatever, and have someone that has experience like yourself in multiple areas to be able to go, here's the optimal way to do it. Here's a way you potentially could. Here's some strategies. You know, what do you most feel comfortable with? And have someone like yourself that can mentor them on how to implement that, not only just the management style, but how it's aligned with the company and the company brand and everything's all together. So having someone that understands the whole thing versus this is just management. You know, you read a management book or you did a business course and this is what it is and that's how you do it. I think now there's so many different facets to management, which like you're someone like yourself and experts bringing into it to make sure everything's aligned, because it's not more like where you're the kind of the industrial age where you manage your staff, you go home, right? It's you manage your staff, and now it can be depending on your experience with them. It could be on social media, it could be out there like, oh, my boss is such a jerk. He did
Yeah,
this right now, and it's you're on Twitter and your pictures there, and they have a meme of you, and it just goes viral, right? So
right.
there's so much different kind of resources and feedback that could happen. So you want to make sure you're aligned in all different areas.
Yeah, and like your brand, each of these leaders also needs to develop a level of trust and respect with their teams, and also any of the other stakeholders that they have to interact with within that overall ecosystem. So, it resonates very well, not just from a brand perspective, but also from a leadership perspective, an employee perspective,
Right.
and all of that is very conducive to a very strong, long-term, sustainable competitive advantage. So it
Wow.
really is in everybody's best interests to, yes, keep things open, maintain a sense of curiosity, have a sense of abundance, right, as opposed to scarcity and
Right.
fear, right? And a lot of that can be, again, driven through thinking outside the box, and not everyone likes that term, but thinking creatively, and also um, just maintaining a sense of curiosity and exploration in
Okay.
order to find those new opportunities. Because a lot of organizations, they get very stuck in individuals, they get stuck in their day-to-day, meeting their day-to-day objectives. And then it really comes down to, it can really drive folks into a mindset of scarcity
Right.
and also fear of missing their objective, fear of not making their boss happy, fear of upsetting the client. And then that really creates a lot of closed minded thinking,
Okay.
which just doesn't work very well in the 21st century, at least in the business world today.
So what's one tip that you would provide right now that, for the listeners to overcome that fear? Because I mean, everyone kind of gets into those states of, you know, you're not meeting your quotas, you know, you have certain things, you're going to this senior management meeting and, you know, you haven't met your deliverables and you're like, you're kind of a panic, right? What is
Yeah.
one tip that you give them to help them kind of overcome that fear?
Well, I think it's giving themselves the opportunity to have a mental break. So whatever that looks like, closing their office door, coming in an hour late, explaining with everyone why you're going to be an hour late, and when you will be available. But give yourself that time to reflect and really take a step back and
Okay.
kind of look from 30,000 feet, and understand from a self-reflective standpoint what's working, what's not working now, right?
Okay.
What worked before in the past, what didn't work in the past, and what might work better in the future, right?
Okay.
And allowing your mind to slow down, to get out of that day-to-day execution mode, and just think a little bit bigger, if you will, look at the bigger picture.
Okay. That's good. That's a good tip. What about journaling?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm a avid note taker. I have my notepad
Okay.
wherever I go. No matter what it is I'm doing, if I have an idea, I jot it down. So yeah, absolutely. Journaling and capturing thoughts in the moment, ideas in the moment, before they're fleeting. Because again, we have so much bouncing around in between our two ears every day.
Right.
It's hard to parking lot things and then recall them later,
Right.
especially as you're getting older like I am. So I find it's very important to be able to write it down or make a voice recording on your phone, memo recording on your phone, whatever it is that's easiest for you.
Right.
Um, Capture that. And then when you do have a time where things slow down, you can go back to that. And then that'll help you think a little bit differently about things and give
So
you some anchors.
So I heard today, I was actually watching Tim Ferriss, who's the writer of the 4 Hour Work Week and different books. And he's kind of his,
Right.
renowned person of breaking down systems. Well, he was saying in his morning, he actually has this kind of small journal where he writes 3 points about success and kind of what's his day's going to look like in the morning. And then at the night, he writes down what did he learn and what did what was a challenge that he had, and then what was he grateful for. And it's just 5 lines throughout the day that now get some kind of, learning. And it could be stuff. And it was interesting. He was like, and he looks at the micro, not the macro. I have a great relationship. No, my wife and I cooked a great dinner. Like that's the
Okay.
micro stuff, because what happens
Yep.
is we miss those granular things where, like you said, if I had a great meeting and I hit my numbers and I hit, $100,000 this quarter, we missed that. I hit that $100,000, but versus I have to hit $1 million this year. Like, oh my, it's this big thing versus, what? I did my quarterly review and I got it. Like
Right.
missing those macro things. And I think as stress goes on, everything starts to pile on. If we miss those micro things, we
Hmm.
don't really kind of give ourselves validation that we're working hard and we're achieving. It's just not we're achieving this big 5 year goal in 1 month. we're right. So I thought that
I
was
know
a
you definitely
good
need
tip.
small bite-size accomplishments and celebrate those, absolutely.
Right.
And then practicing gratitude as well, which you mentioned,
Right.
I find to be very helpful as well. So, and that goes back to what is working. What do you have to be grateful for right now? Because in today's day and age, we're moving so quickly, and it always seems to be "what have you done for me lately" type mentality in the world today,
Right.
that we really discount those things that we have to be grateful for, and we're always striving for more. And it's once you've accomplished that, doesn't seem to be a lot of a emotional bank account, long-standing emotional bank account for those successes or those things that we have to be grateful for. So he's bang on in terms of identifying those things and writing them down.
Yeah, and I think it's the hard thing is that we accomplish something and then we move on to the next thing right away immediately.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
said, versus taking that time, that few minutes to kind of, or even just, half an hour in the morning to say, oh my God, I'm grateful that I have a great job with the team that I work with. I'm grateful for, it's an amazing sunny day and I get to go golfing, with a couple colleagues, like those micro things that all of a sudden makes, the week and everything else better. And you start to realize that, yeah, your job is not that bad. Where a lot of people get into the macro where it's, oh, I've been in this career for 5 years. Oh, I hate it's the same thing over and over again, but they don't realize they've done so much thing in that career. Right. And that as a manager and what they've accomplished, they maybe changed their department, they've revamped it, they've got, even we're talking about branding, they've created a new brand equity, new, platforms, whatever that may be, just
Right.
being grateful for those things. So
Absolutely.
I think it's
And
important.
sharing that with your team. Yes, if you are a leader, you want to be strategic about it, but where it makes sense, yeah, definitely celebrate a success with your team and build on that success, build some momentum with your team, and then also being grateful for individuals when they've gone above and beyond
Right.
that led to that success. Right.
Right. And just that feedback, which is good. Cause I mean, again, it keeps them excited and motivated too. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, going back to like kind of this COVID-19, I know I was in a lot of conversations today about kind of, you know, risk and, you know, mitigation and all that. You know, what can be done in this right now, what we're going through to mitigate kind of my brand and any risk that I'd have? You know, what are some tips, some strategies that you have that could help, you know, myself or some business owners that are out there?
Sure. Well, first of all, with any brand, it's absolutely critical that the balance sheet and the income statement behind that brand is intact. Right? So it's about, again, battening down the hatches and making ensure that everything is in balance in terms of cash flow and expenses and meeting your revenues, because and tapping into the programs that are available courtesy of the federal government and the provincial government to help organizations, small businesses and large businesses, get through this particular unprecedented challenge that we're all facing now today, and for how long we're very uncertain as well.
Right.
So I think it's very important to get things, your own house, in order very quickly, and as a leadership team, understand what your key priorities are.
Okay.
Again, tying back to that brand promise and ensuring you're able to deliver on those things, and then making sure you're taking care of all the stakeholders, including your employees and clients and suppliers, as best you can,
Right.
while also maintaining the sustainability of your organization as we go through this unprecedentedly difficult economic challenge.
Right.
Right. So that's where it would start, and hopefully, given where we are now, and there's been enough time for most people to understand what programs are available out there, understand where they can get some flexibility from their suppliers, or where they can draw on some clients to get them to bring up their accounts payables with you, get them current to help with cash flow. Wherever those things are possible, you want to ask those questions, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. If you don't
Okay.
ask, you don't get. Right.
Right.
So getting that in order, making sure that you're in as strong a position as possible
Right.
from a financial standpoint, because again, that's what makes the world go round, and just, you don't want to lose sight of that. And that would be the key responsibility, working with all the other stakeholders, but of this the controller or the CFO or the VP of finance, whatever the case may be. That would be something they would lead, with everyone else contributing. So that would be
Okay.
number one. Marketing and sales folks, again, getting out to customers and clients with that new messaging of, brand, corporate citizenship, letting them know that you haven't disappeared, and that
Right.
you're still in business and there to help them if and where necessary, and provide a few ideas as to how you may be able to assist them, because they may never have thought of it.
Okay.
Right. And then with employees, understanding who you need to keep on, and then if there are folks that you do need to lay off, make sure that you're taking them through that process with complete transparency, and
Mhm.
letting them know up front what programs are available from the Canadian government, whether it's the CERB or EI or whatever the case may be, to assist them in getting through this challenge as well. You
Right.
don't want to just say, you're laid off. Here's your record of employment. If we need you again, we'll call you.
Right.
You need to treat them again with respect, and with a certain level of trust, and hence comes the transparency.
Right. And then the challenge with that is if they don't, I mean, this is, you know, knock on wood, it's going to eventually be over, right?
Hmm.
Very soon. Now you have to ramp your staff back up. You don't want to kind of burn the bridges that, well, no, you let me go this way. I'm going to go work with the other company, my competitor, because they're hiring back and they're actually they were more respectful of their employees. So I think
Exactly.
that's a good key point, because this will be over and you want to make sure that you can, you know, retain your staff and get back up going as quickly as possible.
Right, right. And again, I think the CEO of JP Morgan, although his letter to the shareholders is a little bit long and drawn out, it could have probably been shortened to maybe a page and a half. But I understand he has a lot of stakeholders to cover off in that letter. Certainly for a small organization, looking at that as a structure and an approach, I think would be quite helpful, because they really talk about assisting all the stakeholders and letting the shareholders know that in the interim, profitability will be taking a bit of a back seat.
Right.
And
Now,
again, being completely upfront about that is critical as well.
for sure. Now, with mid-sized companies, is that something that you assist them with? You know, because I know a lot of them are looking for guidance on what do we do, right?
Yeah, and oh, guidance, and then also preparing those internal and external communications. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
I think that's important, especially when you got small to mid-sized business that have grown almost kind of grassroots, and now this happens. Now, like, what do we do? We have moral rights and thoughts of okay, what we should do, but having someone that can kind of set up the systems and processes and make sure everything's kind of checked off, because there might be some things they're missing, right? Where you can kind of see
Absolutely.
the whole picture.
Right, right. And yeah, it's about asking good questions,
Mhm.
and just helping people um, think about those things that they may not have thought about, some of their blind spots, for example.
Yeah. And I think it's from like years of experience of you being, in different corporations and different business and working with different companies of different sizes. You've kind
Yep.
of seen what works, what does, and what needs to be, and what's the frameworks where if it was my business and now what do I do with my manufacturing? What do I do with this? What do I do with that? Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. We have to lay people off. It's always putting out these fires versus having someone that's planning it out. Right.
Right. Yeah, and looking at it very strategically and methodically,
Yeah.
and making sure that everything has some order to it and some processes, which is absolutely critical, and making sure when it's executed, it looks like, again, it's been executed from with thought.
Right. Right, and like you said, they're thinking not just of the bottom, the bottom line, the profitability. They're actually thinking about long term of all different aspects of the company. The whole, as you say, stakeholders of employees right across the board, from the guy that's doing the janitorial work up to the C-suite, and then all the clients. It has to look at that 365-degree process when you're planning this out. Not okay, we just got to cut costs.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because everyone's going to be looking to leadership for a source of strength and direction, right?
Right,
And leadership
right,
ultimately, right? So when things get tough, that's when the tough need to get going, and that's when folks really are highly dependent on their leadership teams,
right.
whether it be government leadership, corporate leadership, whatever the case may be. They're that much more dependent on that for guidance,
For sure, for sure.
and that's the opportunity to truly live that brand promise, right, and to build on that brand equity. So
Right,
this is, yeah, not going to help the bottom line, but certainly the opportunity here to really build on that brand the trust and respect for your brand is huge, right?
right,
um, Not good for the bottom line, just like running a huge promotion and trying to steal share from your competition is not good for the bottom line either. But typically that doesn't help the brand. In
right,
some cases, it cheapens the brand and hurts the bottom line. In a situation like this, if it's approached properly, you can definitely build on that trust and respect for your brand,
right,
with at the same, or if not less, impact to your overall profitability, certainly in the long run.
right, for sure. And then do you have any recommended strategies for that? Like anything that you would say, offhand, if you did this, this, and this, and I'm even thinking for restaurants. A lot of restaurants now are doing kind of more free meals or different services where they're helping their local community where maybe they can't get food. The older population, some of the homeless, they're actually making food, and they're doing it
Right.
out of kind of looking at, like you said, being a Torontonian, looking after the city versus, this is a marketing, gimmick.
Hmm. Well, yeah, you hear, I think it was announced today, Honda's making available their vehicles in order to transport COVID patients,
Right.
like almost like a make an improv ambulance to transport those COVID patients where necessary. An example in Hamilton, for example, the Sheridan, which is currently not servicing customers like it normally would, are opening many of their floors for. They're opening up, I think, over 1,100 beds for non-COVID patients,
Oh, wow.
rooms for the Hamilton Health Sciences, in order to service the rapidly expanding client base that they're having due to this pandemic.
Right.
So again, those are two examples there where a brand has something available that it's a resource that's not being used otherwise to assist in getting through this pandemic. And again, really stepping forward as a corporate citizen.
Right.
So ultimately, the leadership team, when they get together, they need to understand what it is that they have available to them as a resource that's currently not being utilized, and what could then be offered up to the community in order for it to be utilized at, in some cases, minimal or no incremental cost.
Which is awesome. I mean, when you think of it, when people can do that, right, it helps the people that are maybe less fortunate that don't have access to certain amenities, food, anything along that line. It just kind of helps us in all this pandemic and the stress that everyone's going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I did hear of some examples of airlines starting to use the cargo sections of their passenger planes to transport different things that are necessary to assist with the pandemic as well.
Right.
So again, that's an opportunity, again, a situation where there's an asset that's not being utilized. Yes, there's fuel costs and whatnot, but relatively and pilot costs, etc., but relatively insignificant. Especially when they know that they're going to be getting a lot of support from the government in terms of grants and etc. So again, giving back to the community.
Right. Yeah, I know someone was telling me just recently they were trying to fly. I guess it was across Canada, and they were saying, there's a lot of restrictions in that sense. But even when they got on the plane and they were flying, right, I think they were going to a funeral. The plane was almost empty. They said it was literally like kind of flying their own private jet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that, I guess that would be more of a humanitarian flight, and allowing those people to get where they need to go to observe the loss of a loved one. And
Yeah.
they're very fortunate they can do that. There's some countries that are so overrun with mortality that they can't even, and with all the risks of not practicing social distancing, they're unable to even have funerals. So
Yeah.
some
Which
huge.
which is sad. I mean, we're seeing kind of on the both side when you look at people passing, but you also look on the life side where people, or some people had marriages and weddings scheduled that now have to be postponed or canceled, or just the immediate family, maybe a couple people are there, so and they spent as we know with weddings and all, you spend tens of thousands, if not even more money on a wedding, expecting all the family and everyone to be there, and you can only have this small group.
Yeah, no, it is challenging. But ultimately, again, coming back to practicing gratitude
Mm-hmm.
for all of us who are healthy. I know we should be grateful that we are healthy and that we live, like you and I live in a first world country where we have world class healthcare
Mm-hmm.
available to us, and where we can kind of batten down the hatches and not be concerned about where our next meal is coming from, unlike a billion other people on this planet. So that certainly helps provide some perspective as well as we get through this challenge, and we will get through it, and we will come out on the other side a lot stronger.
Right.
And I think challenges like this, we're going to see not just brands, but companies and governments and politicians and corporate leaders. This is an opportunity for them to shine
Right.
and really make a difference, and to build on, again, that trust and respect in each and every one of those brands, because they are all brands, whether it's a person or a business or a government or whatever the case may be. There's a brand associated with it. So this
Right.
is an opportunity to really build on that trust and respect for the brand.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I think it's so important right now. We're seeing like almost like a light shine on all the companies and everything around, just to see how we're going to deal with a stressful situation, and who comes out of it, and who comes out of it ethically and morally, and and not just kind of like crumble under the stress and under the situation, right? Where you're seeing people and companies, stand up, right, and really kind of show what their values are.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's no better time to do that.
So now, are you finding any of your companies are having security risks or challenges through these COVID pandemic? Are you kind of hearing it from your clients? They're kind of locking things down, having any issues?
Um, Not particularly. Like I haven't heard that there's been a huge spike in ransomware, for example, or whatever the case be. I do know, obviously, a lot of people are now working remotely from home,
Hmm.
so there are new access points where black hats can access corporate servers, government servers, whatever the case may be, through a less than secure remote access point. And there are a lot more of those now, obviously, with everyone working from home. So I'm I'm not. I haven't heard any stories, but I would suspect you'd probably know better that certainly would be certainly a weakness, a point of vulnerability for IT
Right.
and and corporate IT, government IT, even personal IT for that matter.
I had this week, I think it was on Monday, I actually saw a dark web report, and they were showing that, I guess it was the start of February, that the increase of accounts, privileged accounts that were on the dark web now increased drastically. Right, where people like, or admins, C-suite type people, directors, kind of that role, you start to
Right.
see this huge increase because I think what we're finding is that they're going out online to forums, different areas, and signing up, trying to get information, and they're entering in their first name, last name, email address, and some of these forms are asking for passwords, and they're using their company password because it's something they remember, right? Because they go
Oh, okay.
across all platforms, and all of a sudden
Right.
now they're compromised. And watching this dark web report, I was like, oh my god! Like you can start seeing company name, company name, company name, company name. And it wasn't the point where it's like John Doe at gmail.com. It was
Right.
John Doe at companyx.com,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So you can literally go, and if you did a search on their profile, you could probably find them on LinkedIn and link it right back to that company. And then now you have an access point, and they have privileges, and you can go right in. So I'm seeing that side, just even just that teaser of
Right.
now the escalation when it comes to cybersecurity. Because again, you look at some of the concerns that we've been talking to different companies about are the landscape and the actual attack surface now. Like you said, it's people are using their home computers, so you don't have endpoint protection. You don't have like an updated antivirus or anti-malware. Potentially their Windows or even Mac might be out of date, right? and
Right.
then
Yep.
and then you
Oh,
have a lot of people using those systems. It's not like it's mom's only computer. Mom
right.
and the kids use it, and dad uses it, and this person uses it. So now you have so many people on it doing different things, from social media to playing games, whatever, across the board.
Right.
So
Right.
so
Yeah.
there's a lot of security challenges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could definitely see that. And yeah, I know a lot of businesses are having challenges with that because even with their business continuity plans that they had in place, like even the big banks here in Canada, for example, they had business continuity plans in place, but they were satellite offices where
Right.
everyone would go and work in the satellite office, right? Well, no one foresaw this black swan where it was essentially no, they can't even work together in a satellite office. They all have to go to their own homes and self quarantine and self isolate. So
Right.
very few people saw that coming, if any, and so it's certainly put a real strain on all the existing infrastructure and businesses in place to help facilitate that work from home scenario.
For sure. Now, do you see security being something that helps to kind of lever the and build the brand equity?
Absolutely. In order for a brand to be trusted, it also has to, demonstrate that it can be trusted and with sensitive information
Okay.
and proprietary information, um, and that it is being held and protected in a secure way. And if it turns out to not be the case, then you can have some serious issues.
Right.
For example, Zoom,
Hmm.
right? Just recently, they've had some challenges in that space, and it was picked up on and reported, and but they again, full transparency, the CEO came right out and apologized and said, we lost our way, we missed a step, and we will we will correct this, and we will do a better job.
Right.
So I think he did a great job getting ahead of that. But that's just a perfect example
Right.
of where a lack of security can damage a brand. Private, and that's also privacy. That's not just security, but also privacy as well. But both, maintaining someone's security and their privacy is a big part of trust in a relationship,
Right.
right? And a brand is equally responsible for that, as is just as a person would be in any
Right.
relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize for the people that are watching this that you got like what they call as PII, is personal identifiable information, and then you got PCI compliance, that people are taking, credit card information or payments. So these
Right.
all these compliance things that you have to think about, especially now when people are not having this, office or store you go into and they're taking payments online. Have they done their due diligence to make sure that everything is now secure, right? That the
Right.
data is secure, that their e-commerce solution is secure, because now they have a flow of traffic going a different way that might not normally be the case. They might have had this retail store, but now you have, say 60-70% are going actually into your retail store, and maybe 30 to 20% maybe is, online. Now that completely switched over, right?
Right.
Where majority of your clients now are shopping online if they're still shopping. But now is it, is your data encrypted? Is it stored properly? Is it doing all that? You're meeting these compliance online, because some people were just saying it's just a small percentage. I have it up to a certain point. Well, now it's the main point of your business, something they really have to look at right now.
Right. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Because of the way they're commercializing it, what it is they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it is moving online and to a much greater extent, then yeah, there's just a much greater risk associated with that. Absolutely.
Right. And I think it's that pandemic has really kind of pushed people to that direction now. And what I'm seeing on the security side is that we're seeing that people were forced almost overnight to change. It wasn't this slow progression and maybe they were thinking about it. It was
Right.
literally like turning on a light switch that, oh my God, we have to do this now.
Hmm.
Right. So as you know, sometimes things get lost in transitions and in deployment, right? Just because we have to get up now, go, go, go.
Right. So, and even though they have done that, and that's fine, sometimes, you have to ensure that's done in an emergency situation, but they now need to ensure that they're backfilling
Right.
and reviewing all those vulnerabilities and putting plans in place to shore them up
Right.
as quickly as possible. Um, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's just absolutely critical in an emergency situation. You've got to, pick the least disruptive path forward, and sometimes you can't dot all your I's and cross all your T's, but it's absolutely critical that you backfill and you go back and you address all of those things proactively,
For sure. No, I
even if
agree.
you do it out of the gates.
Right. Like you said, sometimes it's just, the path of least resistance. You got to get up, you got to get going. And then, like you said, get the team in and kind of review it. Like, so I totally agree to that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah,
now,
it's never too late. It's never too late.
yeah, I don't agreed, just to make sure you don't leave.
Or unless something happens, and then it might be too late.
Well, that's just say, don't leave it too long.
Yeah,
Right.
because yeah, don't take the fatalistic approach. Well, we haven't done it yet, so
Well,
no point in doing it now. No,
yeah.
there's every point in doing it.
Right. And that's the thing, like you said, I mean, get up, get going, get profitable, kind of get your systems up. But then as soon as you are, kind of status quo and you're going, that's now with the time to kind of have the war room now evaluate, okay, we're up, we're going. What do we need to look at? What's kind of going on, and then go through it. And then, I mean, I know for our company, we're doing breach breach planning, breach assessments. We're doing vulnerability assessments, gap assessments. We're looking at all these different areas where people need to look at just because we got up. Now what? Right? Okay, so let's look at all these areas. And the simplest things, if when you look at like policies, some people have got up, they've got the technology, they've done that, but they don't have a business impact analysis. They don't have the continuity plan. They haven't done their acceptable use policy. They haven't done all that because, well, it was mostly for their in-house team, and they had your kind of your sales team or some people that are remote. But now all your clients or all your employees are remote. Now
Yep.
what? Have they been trained, signed off, and validate that they're not allowed to go to certain sites while working, while that, like, there's these little things that you just don't think about, that they're on now their own home personal computer. What do you restrict? How do you do that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It does. It does create some challenges. Then also, as people are now working remotely, they also need to, in some cases, be provided with some more autonomy in order to make critical decisions with clients or suppliers or whatever the case may be, and not have to, because they can't just tap their associate or walk over to their manager and ask a question. So there has to be a little bit more direction provided to those on the front lines in order to be able to make those critical decisions in a timely manner.
For sure. And I think that's important now, because you got to trust in the training and everything you've done up to that point that your staff will follow through.
Right. And then of course ensure that you're measuring them and incentivizing them to do that. Right.
Okay.
Because then they'll truly believe that yeah, okay, this is what my leadership wants us to do, because they're measuring on us, they're incentivizing us on it. This isn't just a bunch of puffery, right? This is the real deal.
Right. And it could potentially be the new business, right? We don't know if this is going to change how a lot of companies do business going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the other thing in this situation, that you mentioned earlier, the 360-degree feedback loop, absolutely essential now, because the environment is changing so quickly and we don't know what we don't know. And you've got all of those touch points, all those brand ambassadors out there gaining new insights day in and day out. And you want to make sure you have a process in place that allows those insights to be funneled back into the organization in a trusting, respectful, safe manner, so that people feel like they're being heard. And you're not going to act on everything, of course. You're going to look for themes and trends and then steer your organization that way. But if you're not picking up those data points, if you will, from all your brand ambassadors across your entire ecosystem, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage.
Right. So now going forward, I mean, we're still kind of, deep in the pandemic. What are some recommendations you're giving right now for companies to kind of think about, look at, and kind of what to do going forward?
Yeah. So again, if they've gone through the processes I mentioned of battening down the hatches, understanding their cash flow situation, their balance sheet, income statement, they've got their clients in a sustained format where they're able to they put out any fires and can start working proactively. That's great. Making sure that their employees are all in a good place and understand how the organization is moving forward. That's when, again, the leadership team can come together and start working on understanding, again, what worked in the past, what's working now, getting that feedback, right? Because what's working now could be a very key indicator as to how they have to pivot moving forward in the future, right? And then they can start thinking about what might work in the future from the eyes of all of their stakeholders within the ecosystem.
Okay.
And because ultimately, if they're just looking at what's in it for them, then that's not going to work. So they need to understand what's in it for the organization, what's in it for their clients, what's in it for their suppliers, what's in it for their employees, what's in it for the shareholders, all of those things, and what their expectations might be, so that they can take a holistic approach to this. But it's going to require a lot of good data and insights from all their brand ambassadors, and a real mindset to be curious. Again, I come back to being curious and thinking forward in terms of an abundance mindset, as opposed to a scarcity mindset. Because right now we're in a scarcity mindset, and that's fine. But yes, we will come out of this, and we're all going to come out of our homes and get back in our cars and go back to work, and the kids are going to go back to school, and we'll be back doing a lot of the things the same way we did before, and then a lot of things will be done differently as well. So understanding what those things are, and then how your organization can best pivot to meet what that new environment looks like is absolutely critical. And the earlier you start in that process, the better.
Okay. So now you made a comment that I think is kind of key for people to hear again, is that you're talking about tracking. So you want people to, and you recommend people to track kind of their changes, their progress, what's going on in this time as well, to kind of get a snapshot of, when it started, kind of in a benchmark, to now, maybe as you start to pick up and now the pandemic goes down, to kind of get a window to see, what happened in this incident. Was that correct?
Yeah, and you'll have to see what happens, and there'll probably be different phases to how you pivot into this new world, right?
Right.
So it's not just going to all happen in like the flip of a switch.
Right.
There'll be different phases that will be required, and those phases will be dependent on the priorities of the organization and all the stakeholders within that organization for a long-term, sustainable competitive advantage moving forward.
Right. Yeah, because I think those analytical points, those data points that you're talking about, I think is essential because they really can get a really good snapshot of if they have to run lean, what does that really mean for the company long term, right?
Hmm.
Were they running a lot more, I guess, they had a lot more expenses that they needed. And now since, this pandemic really kind of shined a light on, you know what, maybe we didn't need to have such a big overhead. We didn't need to have 5 floors of a building. Maybe we only needed 2, right?
Right.
Kind
Yeah.
of things like that where I think we're going to see out of this kind of, this pandemic as a benefit. Companies are going to look at how they can be more efficient with their costs and their spending, right? And then see that, we could have more of a stronger work from home workforce, right? Because
Right.
we ran great, we did all that, and the overheads, lower. And then now we could be more profitable and do more things with, with the business.
Sure. Or yeah, even a more decentralized workforce as
Right.
well. So a lot more people working out in the field and not necessarily having to be chained to their desk 9 to 5, right? Or whatever the case may be. So yeah, this will push organizations definitely into a place where they're going to have to find new ways to measure their employees' performance, and it won't necessarily be from looking over their shoulder and working with them face to face day in and day out. It'll
Right.
really force them to focus more on results, um, and as opposed to the day-to-day behaviors. It's the overall behaviors and strategies that the employees are bringing forward to deliver on their objectives.
For sure. Well, David, that's amazing. Thank you so much for all the information. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach me via email at dstitt at businessstrategy.expert. I know that's long, but again, dstitt, STITT, at businessstrategy.expert. Or
Okay.
you can reach me by phone at 905 510 7806. If I'm not available to pick up, please leave a message. It's confidential and private, and I'll return your call at my earliest convenience.
Perfect. I mean, I think one thing I want to kind of add into that is that, your expertise, kind of your knowledge, your experience in the industry, helping small to mid-sized companies is essential for companies now to tap into, because again, it's good to have an outside party come in and say, what are you doing to validate kind of your strategies, to, bounce ideas off of, even like you said, looking at management training and things that you can do right now to even be better, at your business when this comes out. Like there's so many different things, marketing plans, marketing strategy, brand equity, all those things you can help them with now while there's a little bit of a slow period or there's transition. That's the best time to actually have some
Absolutely.
come in to help.
Absolutely. And because people will, once again, everything's somewhat calm. Once again, I keep using the analogy of the hatches being battened down. Once that is in place and there's a sense of calm, and people can start thinking a little more proactively, that's the best time to bring me in. And it also works out very well that the federal government and provincial government have a subsidy program that was in place before COVID. And small organizations that qualify, typically under 50 employees, and a certain size in terms of annual revenue, can qualify for the governments to pay 5/6 of the training costs. And that budget opened up April 1st, and it's a first come, first served basis. So
Right.
the timing is almost impeccable in that sense, and that funding is still available
Right.
for small businesses that qualify. And I can help the organizations navigate through that application process and
Right.
make that as turnkey as possible for them. So, again, in terms of value, now is a great time. Well, first of all, you're going to have the opportunity to start thinking proactively, and what better time than when the environment in which your company is working is changing so dramatically, and then again the federal and Ontario government are subsidizing that as well. So
Right.
yeah, they've approved my training program, and it's again a fairly turnkey process, which I can assist my clients through in
That's perfect.
funds.
And I think just to kind of leave off, I think I just want to remind people that, a lot of companies and a lot of successful people became successful, grew their success in the harder times, right? That's when they made the changes, they made the transitions, they did things that, when it was hard, when it was tough, when things were, very lean, they made the decisions, they made the changes, they made the pivots, and then all of a sudden their success just went through the roof. And these are the times when you can make those changes and you can get help and you can get people in, like yourself, David, to come out and just kind of talk to them and give them strategies and work through things.
Right, right, and also in yourself from an IT security strategy standpoint, right? Making sure that they're mitigating the risks and taking advantage of all the opportunities that IT security can deliver for their organization.
Yeah, and it's important, like on that side, and just want to, you guys that are listening, is that have a company come in and just give you a kind of a quick evaluation of what's going on, because a lot of companies have changed quickly and pivoted fast, and sometimes it leaves gaps, it leaves holes, right? And things that, you might be thinking about, okay, let's think about that later, and later might be too late, and because now you've been breached or compromised. I know, just a quick, story about this is I know one company that we talked to about a week, 2 weeks ago. The people that compromised them were in the system 6 months prior. So they're already in, they're navigating around, going through. And then when we did a forensics investigation, we found out they were actually been in for 6 months. It wasn't that one incident where some people think, oh, it just happened now. Actually, no, it happened months ago. The actual incident, the impact happened now.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
things
Absolutely.
to think about, right? Because right now, when your workforce is scattered, this is times when you're very vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, they could already have access to your systems. They just haven't pulled the trigger, or they're doing things that you haven't picked up on yet. And then the time will come where they may pull the trigger on a catastrophic ransomware event, for example, and then it's too late. So yeah, if you can come in and assess their systems and identify those risks proactively before the black hats pull that trigger, then yeah, they'll be much better off.
For sure. Totally agree. So guys, just to let you know, I'm going to have David's information in the description below. So if you're listening to or watching it, you can go. I'll actually have his email address and his contact information below. So if you have any questions, please reach out to him, especially business related, marketing related, brand related, anything along that line. Take the opportunity right now while you're kind of building, while you're changing, while you're transitioning. Take the opportunity now to just even have just a quick chat with him, just to say, look, this is what we're doing. What do you think? So David, thank you so much for your time. It was really helpful, especially with this pandemic going on, to get your expertise on what people should be looking at, especially on the business and marketing side.
Well, thank you, Brandon. It was my pleasure, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this as well. I
Awesome.
look
So,
forward to talking to you again.
oh, for sure. And like, we'll keep in touch. And like, again, as soon as this is over, we'll have another kind of catch up meeting and
Sure.
on the podcast, just to kind of say, okay, so now we're through it. What's next? What should we be doing?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you,
Awesome.
sir.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, guys, just don't forget, software's hackle, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber podcast.